moving on from Mr. Game & Watch, we have Link, who is one of the biggest reasons as to why talking about veterans has become much bigger. For starters, he's obviously supposed to have his Breath of the Wild look, so his appearance is most likely to change, so that's a plus. But what about his moveset? Since he's based off his Breath of the Wild incarnation, he's most likely not going to have the same moves as he's had before. At least with Twilight Princess Link, he's always had a bow, he has the Gale Boomerang, he has his own bombs, and for a hook shot, he has the claw shot. But Breath of the Wild Link does not have all these attributes that Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess Link have. Sure, he has the Master Sword in the form of a bow, and he can get boomerangs, but it's not a mainstay, nor would it be anything unique like Toon Links. So, for starters, I would make his neutral be, instead of the bow and arrow, I'd make it the spin attack. Not just like in this game, it can be charged and it can do devastating launch and damage, but I was also thinking that because it's Breath of the Wild, that if you leave it charging for an even longer period of time, a small, how should I phrase this? A small projection would appear around Link, like a force field of sorts. Anyone in that force field would automatically be targeted by none other than Urbosa's Fury from Breath of the Wild, a champion power that allowed Link to shock opponents, doing devastatingly strong damage and paralyzing them longer than any other shock-based weapon could do. I was thinking if it should paralyze people who get caught with this move, or if it should... Oh, you son of a bitch. Or if it should go through shields, and I think I'd go with the paralyzing effect along with strong damage. Of course, if it takes too long to charge, they can go through shields, I think. I think it's a fair trade-off, considering how long it would take to charge. That being said, I'm saying that it should take a while. I'll get into his final smash in a bit, despite what I'm doing now. But for the side B, although I said for them to scrap the arrows in terms of the neutral, I think they should be replaced with the side B. It would actually be pretty interesting considering that initially Link's neutral B used to be the boomerang, and in Melee that got changed to the side special, or forward special if you prefer. So I think it'd be a interesting decision to make it the side special. The only thing I would change about it is giving it an RNG factor where it could potentially be like the misfire from Luigi's missile, or the 9 judge from Mr. Game & Watch's forward special, and that every other arrow turns into an ancient arrow to deal massive damage and immediately be charged when fired. Like it has the trajectory, just like a fully charged arrow without charging it, if that makes any sense. Down B, I would make bombs, but not in the same way that they've always been. For this one, they would be bomb runes, because that's the only way he really can use bombs other than utilizing bomb arrows. So what I was thinking is you're able to grab one bomb out, and when you throw it, it doesn't explode on contact. Instead, what it does is it bounces off the opponent like any other normal type of projectile item thrown. Kind of like a Pokeball without the Pokemon summoning, a capsule without the explosion RNG, or one of the villagers' pieces of wood from when he cuts down a tree. If you press down B again, it would detonate automatically, since all the remote bombs that, or all the bomb rune bombs are remote detonated. I think it would be pretty good for certain setups. And then we have his aerial, which I already stated that the neutral B should be his his spin attack. Not only would it deal that powerful damage I mentioned before, but also it would just be a nice control callback to how he attacks in all his games, where it's usually the B button, you know? But that's beside the point. My point is that his recovery should no longer be the spin attack, but instead another power from the champions he gets from Breath of the Wild, and that is Rivali's Gale. Now, Rivali's Gale can have an interesting effect where it would be a wind box, obviously, pushing opponents away while Link rides the wind, even with his paraglider if needed. And what I was thinking is, if anybody's above Link when he uses it, they get shot up into the air at an insanely high launch, and it could possibly kill, just like Mr. Game & Watch's trumpet up air, or even Mega Man's I don't want to say air tornado, but I think that's the actual name. His tornado, his up air, where it does like small damage, but it also launches the opponent incredibly high and potentially kills. It's possible that they could also let him be able to move when free falling, so I would give him that ability, considering that he's not utilizing a technique like before. And then one of his last normal things is his grapple. Now, he doesn't have any hook shot or claw shot in Breath of the Wild, so what I was thinking is they can just give him a regular grab. I mean, I'd feel he's capable of doing it, but my main reason for wanting a normal grab for Link is, one, the magnesis doesn't really complement grabbing other opponents. It's usually just for grabbing metal. And the other thing is that I want somebody to finally implement a pummel where someone just punches the other in the face, and I think Link doing it would be fantastic. And it's not like Link can't punch. He can punch, because if you crouch in Breath of the Wild and open a chest, he actually punches it. So I think it would just be cute. The last thing to talk about is his final smash, and I have a few interesting ideas, but I think I'm gonna stick to one, because one, they're mostly the same. The other thing is that I think it's more suitable for one to be used than the other. Okay, so hear me out on this idea. Now, a lot of people have been trying to think that if it wasn't the Magnesis rune, it's the Stasis rune that Link should use as a grapple. Now, I've already thought about this, and I feel that using the Stasis as a grab would be a little interesting, but not really a traditional grab. So what I was thinking is that it can be used a little bit like Bayonetta's own final smash. Just like the Triforce beam that traps opponents with his Triforce slash, I was thinking that what they can do is have the Stasis rune activate and shoot a beam that pierces across the screen, hitting multiple people in the way. Now what they can do is they can have a timer go off, just similar to the blinking that's in the Stasis rune effect. And what happened is your goal is to get the maximum momentum, basically change the yellow to red, and once the momentum is all the way, the opponent gets launched into a cinematic where it has the divine beasts all firing their lasers that they use at the end of the battle, or not the end of the battle, but against Calamity Ganon when you start the battle. And this beam not only does additional damage, but depending on the amount of percentage you've accumulated through the stasis attacks and the cinematic, it could either do an instant kill, much like Gamora from Bayonetta's Final Smash, or it would just launch with the same momentum that you had obtained through the stasis. Now, if you don't get it to the max momentum, then what they can do is just launch based on, like, let's say, orange momentum, which is fairly decent. It's not as far as red, but you know what I mean. I think not only would it be a good callback, see, like this beam, just only all across the screen. So yeah, it would launch a little bit like that if it was orange. And that's pretty much all I got for Link, other than taunts, which he could use some different ones. I mean, he can keep this one, but I was thinking for the other two, he could replace one with the animation of him eating a skewer item, just because it's cute. I'd rather him just cook, but I think it would take too long and be a little more plausible. And the other one being him pulling out the Sheik slate to take a picture. Not a selfie, like a picture of the enemy. Like, for instance, when they get in the blast zone, you see that giant light. Wouldn't you think someone would take a picture of it? It's also pretty insulting, if you ask me. Oh, but I'm just getting started because all the Zelda characters have a lot to talk about. Maybe not Toon Link, but I have a lot to talk about everybody. At any rate, Zelda's another character, and everybody knows that she needs an update. I mean, I love Twilight Princess Zelda, but she is just so damn weak in this game. Just awful, all over the place. And that's no secret. So first off, just to not to tune in, but to be consistent with the design, the Twilight Princess look can go, and she can have her Breath of the Wild look. Not the dress that she wears in the castle, and not the one she wears when praying. That one is ugly, and you cannot tell me otherwise. You cannot change my mind on that. So, add that change your mind meme. But anyways, yeah, not any of the dresses, but the one that she wears when she's just adventuring out normally. I guess it's just regular attire. I want to say it's a corset, but I don't know. I'm not an expert on clothing. I think she is wearing one, but that's beside the point. The point is, like, basically the outfit and the concept art, the amiibo and all that stuff. That's what I'm talking about. But that's just appearance-wise, and that's the tie-in with Breath of the Wild Link. So, in terms of moveset, first off is her neutral B. Normally it's Nehru's Love, which is a physical attack that can also act as a projectile. It's also something that newbie Zelda users use when they're in a tight spot, or just spam because of how decent it is. It's one of her only decent attacks. Anyways, what I would do is replace it with a move I call Light Blessing, which is actually taken out of an idea that she has in her Hyrule Warriors incarnation. Basically, when you press the special attack button, or not the special meter special attack, but basically like Y, depending on your control scheme, the Y button, she summons these, it's like a special power thing. She summons these three spheres of light, and what they are used to do is change up her combos to do more damage to a variety of enemies and just all around do more damage. And I died. So what I was thinking is that she could have something like that, and it would work the same way, at least in a sense, on how Cloud's Limit Breaker would work, and that is that it powers up special moves. If not, at the very least, what it can do is give her different stat boosts, similar to the Wii Fit Trainer's Deep Breathing, giving her an attack boost, maybe some health even. I'd give it a combination, because having a healing attack or a healing power is kind of weird, and in my opinion kind of useless, considering how hectic the battlefield can be and not getting enough time to, you know, recover. Oh, so much for that. At any rate, that's all I got in terms of the neutral B. The side special, I would make the Bow of Light, similar to Link in that he can shoot a bow, but this would be like a bit of a set projectile, if that makes any sense. What I mean is that it has a certain range, you can't rapidly fire it. How would I put this? It'd be a little bit like the boomerang, or no, not even that. I would say it would be like Falco's blaster, but with a slower fire rate, maybe a bit more power, and you can't fire it in rapid succession. I think I already mentioned that, just in a different way of explaining it. Its range can go across the screen because it is light arrow, and light arrows in this game have usually been pretty, you know, strong, considering that they're final smashes. But this one could be a nerfed version of it. The thing is that it could be a decent projectile. Actually, Bayonetto's pistols would actually be a good example on how I would like it range-wise. Or not range, but I don't even know. My point is that it's a bit of a limiting projectile, but it has some decent power, but the main gimmick is that you want to use the neutral B to power it up, and that's what I kind of base her moveset on, is utilizing that power to make her other attacks more viable. This can make her a bit more of a complicated character than she needs to be, though, so I can understand why this idea may not work. And I mean, it's still up for like improvement, because there's not a lot I can work with Zelda herself, considering a lot of her powers are kind of taken from things that Link has. Nehru's love is something that Link acquires from a Great Fairy. Din's fire is much more better when Link uses it, and Ferora's wind is an interesting teleport, to say the least. Actually, no, the best example is Pit's arrows. Pit and Dark Pit's arrows. I think more Dark Pit than anyone. But yeah, it would be like theirs, where they can't fire in rapid succession, but they do decent damage. I don't think you'd be able to angle them, and they only get more powerful when you have the Light Blessing Limit Breaker thing on. That's how I wanted to put it. I guess Samus's missiles could act the same way too in that comparison, but not so much. Anyways, though, the next move I would give her is a magical counter. This would be a little different from regular counters, and for people who've played like some of the more traditional God of Wars, not the new one that came out, what they could do is give her a golden fleece-like effect. What I mean is that the golden fleece in God of War could counter physical and projectiles attacks. And with this magical counter, she could like clasp her hands together, and upon getting hit, like a burst of light would counter attack. Like anybody who hits her normally, she could retaliate with a light blast, and it would just send them flying, like any other normal counter. But with a projectile, upon getting hit with it, blast, or not blast, a projectile of light will shoot back at the opponent. Whether it's in the same speed or form, like if it's a size of a Mega Buster shot or Samus's Charge Beam, I'm still debating. But in terms of power, it would double, just like any reflector. It'd be a decent counter and give her a lot more breathing room. If not, they can always give her Nehru's Love. Just only have the ability to counter physical attacks as well. That's the only thing I would change about it. And not have that stupid physical hitbox thing. You know what I mean. And then lastly is her recovery, and really I got nothing. I'd probably keep it the same. Okay. I'd probably keep it the same, being Furore's Wind, but just giving it a golden light effect. But that's pretty much about it. Let's see. For regular attacks and such, I mean, she can have a variety of different, short swords and lances based off of ancient technology from Breath of the Wild. They could also have the ability to be broken too. I don't know if I give her that much, but a lot of her moves can be based off of those weapons that Link doesn't bring, since he has the Master Sword, which is unbreakable. It just gets tired. So that could be an interesting moveset for her. It's not one I'm completely agreeable with, but mixing magic and weaponry is something that has been introduced into this game, in the form of Robin, I mean. And I think Zelda can up it with her own natural magic and not tome magic. But, I mean, it's all up to Sakurai and how they want to do Zelda, but I'm just giving my own ideas on how I would probably change her. It probably wouldn't be for the best, but I think it would be better than this iteration. In terms of a final smash, I would give her the ceiling effect that she uses against the Guardian in Breath of the Wild during one of the final cutscenes or memories. Basically, she can summon the Triforce and activate the ceiling power, which for Smash Brothers can do a wide area of effect damage that sucks in all the opponents into the center as it's dealing damage to them over time. And then light bursts out, causing all the opponents within the sphere, depending on how close they are to the center, to be launched very, very far. Think of it like being stuck in the Grand Star from Rosalina's Grand Star Final Smash, just without the projectiles. It's more of a vacuum that sucks you in, so it's even harder to escape. Kind of like the black hole ability that Palutena has with her Final Smash. Again, I don't really have a lot to work with in terms of Zelda's moveset, especially when it comes to Breath of the Wild, since the most she's done in terms of activity is running away from the Yiga. I'm not saying she's weak, but I'm just improvising with the game that she's in. That's why I said she can have, certain moves based on certain weapons, like the ancient the ancient gear, short swords, lances. I would probably give her a lance just so that she's not another sword character. And the ancient technology is short, so it's not something she needs to necessarily wield like any of the other weapon-based characters. I wanted to give her the Guardian Laser because that I think would be a lot cooler, but there's no sign of any form of being able to utilize an ancient laser from the Guardians. And I would give her the ancient arrows, but she has the bow of light. So if they decide to scrap my idea with the side B being a bow of light, they can just repackage her final smash and change the bow to the bow of light. Next up is Shiek. And Shiek I don't have as much to change, but she does need a change. First off, she's only been in one game. Hyrule Warriors doesn't really count, but at the same time it does. But what I mean is that she hasn't been in a game where her form can really change all too much. Again, except for Hyrule Warriors. And just to cut to the chase, yes, I think that her new design for Smash 5 should be based on her Hyrule Warriors iteration. Because I think what they should do is pretty much get rid of the Twilight Princess representation and go with Breath of the Wild and Hyrule Warriors. The reason why I bring up Hyrule Warriors is, one, it was a last gen game, and the thing is that number two, Sheik doesn't have a Breath of the Wild iteration. I mean, she does kind of, but it's more of that her costume is unlocked as a nostalgic costume. It's not a new design per se. Now she could have her old design, but I personally like her Hyrule Warriors design the most out of not only this Twilight Princess based design, but her Ocarina design as well. So that would be an interesting idea, not only because they would be acknowledging Hyrule Warriors in that regard. Like I said, I think they should, because it was a last gen game, and Breath of the Wild somewhat falls under that because it also came out on the Wii U. But the reason why I say it would be interesting is because she is shown to be her own character now. So what better way to separate Zelda and Sheik more than to have two different incarnations, much like there's a Link and a Toon Link. There could be a Hyrule Warrior Zelda, a non-canon one, or a Hyrule Warrior Sheik, and then a Breath of the Wild Zelda. And not too many people, I think, would be upset for the fact that Toon Link can stay the same while they have a new Breath of the Wild Link, because, I mean, it's kind of already been established that there's two Links. It wouldn't be like Ocarina of Time, Young Link and Link. And I'm gonna get to Ganon on this subject as well, but for now we're talking about Sheik. So Hyrule Warriors design, again, is my favorite. It's the one that shows off that she's more female in my opinion. Not that like that matters all too much, because she's always been left as ambiguous, and the thing is, we don't really know if her gender changes upon using the magic to transform. But I digress. In terms of attacks, what I wouldn't change too much. For starters, I think her needles can be changed to kunai to represent her her use of them in Hyrule Warriors, as opposed to, well, using needles. The next thing I would change is her side B, because one, this grenade is worthless. It's just there for pressure, which doesn't really give much pressure in my opinion. And I would change that to the bouncing fish, because I think a lot of these arcing jump attacks can be relegated to a side B maneuver rather than a down B. At least I think it's more comfortable to be forward than it is down. Kind of like a jolt haymaker, I guess, so it's more of a natural reaction maybe. Then again, Zero Suit Samus has the same issue, and I wouldn't really change that. So, but just to get rid of this grenade thing, I would put Bouncing Fish. It's a good attack anyways. And my idea for a down B could also be a factor as to why I change it that way. Now in Hyrule Warriors, one of her special abilities was able to utilize the harp and get a certain attribute based on certain combos, I believe. And after that, she could play the harp, and one of, I think, 5 different songs would give her different elemental attacks. And I think they can implement this as a down B special and give her like certain attacks based on how many times she uses it. For like the first time it would be a water attack, which would just knock people away. It doesn't do any damage, much like most water moves. The next one could be a fire type attack that does massive damage but with little to no launch. A little bit like Shulk's Buster mode when it's activated. It doesn't have much launch, but it does have a lot of damage output. The next would be an electric attack that can juggle opponents for lighter damage. And it would only be for a brief moment. Another one could be a dark type attack that causes a suction, bringing foes in and doing damage over time, or it could at least just suck them in so that you can combo them more easily. With the vacuum having a higher range, that way people have a hard time running away from it. And then the last one being a light attack, which has low range but does serious damage and launch. Basically an opposite. So it would be like a kill attack. And then it would recycle back. It could also just be RNG, but I'm not too big on it. Let's see. In terms of anything else, I would change her dash attack to be something like... It would be the same per se, but what I would do is... Oh, jeez. Is I would like equip her with a kunai just, again, for Hyrule Warriors representation purposes. And then the last thing I change is her final smash. Now it could remain the light arrows as well, but just to change it up, again, more Hyrule Warriors representation, what I would do is I would give her the ability to use her special attack from Hyrule Warriors, which was the harp. And what that did is it emitted like several other harps around her to give like a radius of how far her attack would be in trapping foes. And it would be a bit similar to Donkey Kong's Final Smash in that it emits a sound wave. And what could happen is that anyone in the sound wave gets knocked forward, then back, and it keeps repeating. You can press the button for more damage, and the last hit could launch foes away, sending them flying depending on how much damage they've accumulated. Again, if not that, then light arrows. But overall, my biggest concern is please just give her some the Hyrule Warriors design, just so that it can be represented, because this next guy really needs a new makeover in every sense of the word. Next up is Ganondorf, and much like it's no secret that Zelda needs a makeover, Ganon needs one more than anything. I mean, it should go without saying, no one likes him being a Captain Falcon main. I mean, in some sense, yeah, that's pretty cool, because Captain Falcon's one of the coolest characters in Smash Brothers. And Ganondorf does have a few moves that, although are different, they're not something that people like, especially when they can utilize other tools, since he is a magic-based... He can use magic, but brute strength isn't just his only forte. He's a weapon master in of his own right. I mean, he has different types of swords. He can use one or two, and he has a trident. So first off, the one thing I'd change is his design. Again, trying to get away from all the Twilight Princess representation and moving on to Hyrule Warriors and Breath of the Wild. Now, he obviously doesn't have a Breath of the Wild form other than Calamity Ganon, which is way too damn big. So Hyrule Warriors would be the next best thing. Not only is it his most badass design in having inspiration from Demise, his original form per se, but I mean, just why not? It's a shame that it never made it to this game as some sort of costume or something, but I can understand the reasoning why. Smash Brothers usually updates on the last gen, so Hyrule Warriors was on the current gen at the time, but it now has potential. I digress though. The Hyrule Warriors design I think would really help get an appeal for Ganondorf. But design is not the only thing I feel he needs. He needs a new moveset, just like everyone else believes in that. And it was nice trying to differentiate him just a tad with the Ganondorf, or not with with the Captain Falcon motif, Falcon Kick, Falcon Punch. They changed his Dark Choke to, or his Raptor Boost to a choke, which a lot of people like to use Ganon sides. And another reason why I want his moveset changed, just so that suicides can't be something utilized anymore. I'll admit that I like using them, and they're kind of funny sometimes, but I think they need to go. Especially if you're going to favor Ganondorf over Bowser. Anyhow, so a lot of people have been wanting him to use his sword, despite them talking about how many sword users there are and that they overpopulate the roster. In which case I say shut the fuck up, because I mean, there's a lot of characters in every degree. Power users, people who use their fists. Why is sword such a taboo? Now, if your argument is that it's just too much sword based and we need different weapons, then I can understand your argument. But otherwise, you guys don't have an argument, and this is just a meme at this point. Mainly because of the Fire Emblem crowd, but I digress. I really don't care on that argument. I don't feel that there's enough sword users, but at the same time, I would rather just see more weapon representation. So when it comes to him using a sword, I don't want to see that. I want to see him use something a little more unique. Now, he can utilize the Great Sword from Hyrule Warriors, which is his main weapon of choice, or his default weapon, really. But the thing is that I feel that that would just be too much for Ganondorf. Like, he's already a big character, and his Hyrule Warriors design, I think, is just even bigger. So to have the Great Swords would just be overdoing it, in my opinion. At the very least, let's have something to complement all this, and I feel the best way of doing that is by giving him his good old trident, which he also wields in Hyrule Warriors. Thank you. A lot of people have also been asking for his Ganon incarnation as well. So I think this would satisfy the best of both worlds, making his special moveset based on that trident. So it would be the three-pronged regular golden trident. I believe it's a second tier when utilizing that weapon in Hyrule Warriors. Now, in terms of his attacks, because I'm just going based on like looks and moveset theme, I'm not talking about his moves. His first move, his special attack, say goodbye to the Warlock Punch, and what everybody wants him to do is the Tennis, or the Electric Volley as I call it, which would be a sphere that he shoots out that actually can be reversed if you hit it at the right moment. But just like any reverse special, kind of like the Shadow Ball or Aura Sphere, when reflected it does more damage. The difference is that this can keep going back and forth no matter what. But if you use a reflector, it goes past it, just to counteract people who want to use Fox and not play tennis the fair way. This would be his neutral B, and I was thinking it could have a paralysis effect a little bit like Corrin's Dragon Shot, the Dragon Fang Shot, or whatever it's called. At least on weak. Let's see, it could either have a paralyzing effect, with the effect being longer depending on how many times it's reflected, or depending on how many times it's reflected, it becomes stronger and thus just launches instead of paralyzes. I think I'm going to go with the former, though. But if it lands back on Ganondorf, it can paralyze but not do as much damage, no matter how many times it's been hit back. Giving an homage to Ocarina of Time, this move could also possibly be chargeable, so that if you give Ganondorf some time to charge it, he'll actually send out multiple spheres. Whether they can be blocked or sent back, I don't know yet. I haven't really thought of that much. But it would be a decent projectile, and doing it in the air can suspend him temporarily. Because after all, a lot of these attacks he does are also when he's flying. So, you know, that's a thing at the very least. I mean, he can fly right now with his taunt. But I digress. I don't want him to have levitation. That would just be too cheap. Anyhow, the next attack I would give him is his side B, which would be an electrical charge. What he would do in this idea is he would jump and lunge at the foe with the trident, a bit like a Jolt Haymaker by Little Mac. It would leave Ganondorf open if it fails, but will launch the foe into the air if successful, and could open him up for potential aerial combos. I mean, it could also just do regular knockback too, but I think that would be a more interesting idea, and again, give him a lot more potential. Because I really want Ganondorf to be OP if they make him his Hyrule Warriors version. But overall, I just want a really good powerhouse that doesn't have to rely on grapples or being patient. I mean, I'm a very impatient player, so that's just me being biased, and I need to work on that patience. But I think that they can work something out. Just give him some more tools. He can still be slow, although I'd rather give him a faster sprint, because he can run pretty fast in Hyrule Warriors. Same thing with Link, by the way. Give him a faster sprint too. And Zelda, because she's not going to have that dress to weigh her down. But back to Ganondorf, I think that something like that would be pretty decent, like in terms of giving him more, you know, more of a skill level to play, other than jumping off of the edge and then Ganon siding. Like that bad attempt. Anyways, the down B, I would make the ground quake, which is another homage to Ocarina of Time. Basically, what he would do is he would go to the ground if you were directly under him or at the start of the match, whichever you prefer, and he would send out a shockwave all around the area. It was mainly meant just to divide the arena up into a middle square, a ring to go down the lower level, and then the area around the middle square. You know, your old-fashioned tennis court. So what I was thinking, it would be a full armor super. It can have a build-up effect with Dark Aura, much like the Wario Waft, where he starts blinking yellow when he's ready to fart. But the more darkness would mean a stronger attack. This would also tie in with one of his attacks in Hyrule Warriors, where he could build up a meter based on certain combos he did, and depending on how much he built up, it would not only do more damage, but it would also have a much bigger blast radius upon initiation of the attack. But this attack mainly shows him when he's, like, you know, in the air. Even in Hyrule Warriors, he levitates off the ground slightly before slamming his fist down. So what I was thinking is that if it's grounded, at the very least what they can do is is make him levitate a bit. Again, this is a full armor super, so I mean you could possibly try to grab him out of it, but it's best to just avoid it. At the same time, I'm not entirely sure if it would be a good idea, because that would mean he would have some really good edge guarding, because no one can disrupt him. But like I said, the drawback is that there's a lot of wait time, so people can easily get out of the way. If anybody was ever under him, though, when performing this attack, well, first off, before that, the impact of the attack could have a decent range on the ground for grounded enemies, but it could also have a shockwave that goes aerial for anyone that's nearby and just jumping out of the way. But if anybody's directly under Ganondorf, what I was thinking is what they can do is if attacked, instead of just being like attacked normally and then knocked out of the way, or it taking the form of a meteor, he instead initiates a grab and does a choke slam, just like he does with the Ganon sides, or, you know, a dark choke in the air. So people could still keep the Ganon sides, even though I detest having them. I think you would have to have a bit more skill to execute it then. I know I'm a hypocrite, so, you know, no one's perfect. And then last would be his recovery, which wouldn't be this awkward jump that he has, but instead I was thinking of a lightning teleport with the trident. Basically, he would toss the trident up into the air. It could have a hitbox all around so that people that are on the ground would pop up into the air, kind of like how Zero Suit launches people into the air, or how Zelda with Farore's Wind launches people into the air at certain percentages. With him launching the trident up into the air, it would go a set distance before him teleporting to the end, which could have a paralyzing effect, or just a launch pop-off effect, kind of like Samus's screw attack. And I mean, because it would act this way, it could be a possible combo ender because of how how it'd be able to be utilized. It can also be angleable on how he throws the trident, similar to how Corrin's Dragon Wing recovery is angleable right before launch. The only difference is that it would have much more range. I was thinking of making it to where you can stick the trident into the wall, but I feel that would just be a little too much, so this attack is actually based on a character from PlayStation All-Stars, Zeus, who, although there's no real recovery moves, he has an ability to teleport where once he teleports or reappears, he causes a paralyzing or launching effect with his attack. And I'm kind of basing it off of that. The only difference is that that Ganondorf would have a weapon and use it as a type of beacon or lightning rod to get to his destination. It can be a decent set so that it's not too overpowered like Villagers' Balloon Fighter recovery, or something like Greninja's Hydro Pump, where you can angle it multiple times, but nothing useless like what he has now, or Donkey Kong's recovery with the Donkey Copter. In terms of regular attacks, he would obviously use the trident. He would be a very powerful character, but with long range, mind you. But of course, he would be incredibly slow. And for a final smash, it would be the Dark Beast Ganondorf that we all know, but could have one of two different iterations. It can be A, the one that we see in Hyrule Warriors, which I think would probably be the better option, or B, what they can do is give him the Dark Beast Ganon from Breath of the Wild, the Calamity version full of malice for skin. I think the former would be better just considering the design, and just again for more representation of the Hyrule Warriors. But at the same time, I would like to see the cross betweens with Hyrule Warriors and Breath of the Wild. Besides, it's not the first, it's not the only, Hyrule Warriors pretty much represents a majority of Zelda games, and not just itself or, like, you know, a specific one. It represents like a whole bunch of them, because you have different Links. You even have a Breath of the Wild Link and Breath of the Wild Zelda in that game. I know they're just costumes, but that doesn't change the fact that they're still represented in there, even if it's just for the last version that they have. Of course, it could still be Dark Beast Ganon Hyrule Warriors version, but it can have different attacks, because all of Ganon's attacks are mostly based on different powers from the bosses, so it's left up to interpretation on how it would work, but I think the screen rush works just as fine. And the last Zelda character, Toon Link, which I honestly don't have a lot to talk about on, because I think he's fine as he is, and if Link gets the transformation of a new character, Toon Link can represent the classic Link, although not completely. Most of his attacks already replicate that form, so I think it's a decent compromise. Just people would have to get used to it. Sorry for people who just want to live in Melee days. I miss Melee. Anyways, first off, a lot of the themes in this video are that the characters can always use a different look. Toon Link is no exception, and although not a lot of people like to ever talk about this game, I feel that some of the outfits in it were actually pretty decent, and they can be used. He has so many potential alternate costumes because of this game. Again, it's not my favorite. In fact, I think it's the weakest Zelda game officially, like official Zelda game. Well, the CDI games are official too, and I still have a bit of hatred for Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. But Triforce Heroes is an okay game, and I think that they can utilize some of the funny outfits from there to give Toon Link more variety in terms of his attire, like alternate costume wise. As for what they are, well, leave a comment down and tell me which ones you would like to see. In terms of specials, I would just keep him with the same ones he has, because like I said, he could represent the old Link, while Breath of the Wild Link will just be his own character. That way you have the best of both worlds. A little bit how Dr. Mario's in there for the Melee fans, and then Mario's just Mario, you know? Wow, okay. You want to play it like that, huh? Let's see, but one thing I would change is his forward air. It's this weird slash that has just a second of, preparation before he slashes, so it's a little easy to avoid. So if you're going to give him that, give him something a little more familiar. And what I would do is give him the Helm Splitter, which is an aerial move that he uses as a counter. I mean, I would give him a counter, but he just has so many other moves that could take up the slot of a down B or, well, just a counter move. But I'll get into counters in just a second with Toon Link. Yeah, I would change his forward air to the Helm Splitter. It could be a somersault slash, just as it's depicted in Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. But the slash downward, which is supposed to be, I believe, the main attack, could either have the same amount of power that his forward air already has, or it could be a potential meteor attack, because this thrust downward, although I believe it's more taken from Wind Waker, considering that's the killing blow he does to Ganon, I think a Helm Splitter and giving it a meteor effect would actually help him a little more, because he doesn't have any other meteor attacks, and this one's suicide. The only time you're doing that is if you have more stocks, or you have an idea that you're going to land the spike and not die. One thing I give him is a unique ability where his roll can end with a backslice, which is the counter move that I was talking about before. He has two of them. One's the Helm Splitter, the other one could be a backslice. By holding the button after a roll, he could launch into the air and do a swipe that could do some decent damage to an opponent. And not only would this be a unique attack for him to get the better on some people that are a little too defensive and trying to like predict, but also for people who chase. When people are rolling, you can keep rolling back, and then you can change up one roll, and when they're right next to Toon Link, they'll be surprised by, although it's supposed to be a backslice, it would be a jump strike of sorts that would launch the opponent away. It wouldn't change moves, it would just, it'd be a jump strike because you're not going behind the opponent.